Hello, hello, and welcome back to my podcast, Pulling Back the Curtain with Vinny Ali. I'm your host, Vinny Ali, and we're joined by friend of the show, Courtney Adkisson, everybody. Courtney!
Hello. It's good to be
all...
back. I just realized that I was looking back at your former episodes. It's been since like August of last year.
Yeah.
Which, that's insane to me. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, this whole thing has happened because of you being so adamant that I get my voice heard. That's the word we're going to go with, because this is a semi-clean show.
I'll take it.
Yeah, a quick recap. So, Courtney Adkisson is a friend from George Mason University, where we are both alumni. I represent Jamu. Gamu, Gamu, Gamu. We met at a gathering of the minds, let's just say, of nerddom when it comes to Marvel, DC, board games, video games, fantasy novels, all together.
Yeah.
Somehow we crossed hairs that I'm an actor and she's a filmmaker, and
well, at the time I was an art person.
That's right.
And then I eventually transitioned to film, and then I was like, oh no, I know Vinny, like he's my actor guy. So like we tried to maneuver off and on when I first started. But yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite the roller coaster, let's just say. Courtney's gone through. If you are a friend of our show, you should be a friend of her show. Plug the show.
Yeah, we got
plug the two shows you have.
Yeah, we got lucky. So
podcast.
What's awesome too is like I was just talking to Vinny about this yesterday. So we've been on Spotify for, oh my God, it's been a year as of this month. That's insane.
Yes, that's correct. Officially.
We are now transitioning the podcast to YouTube. So we're putting things up. I'm going through my old archives of episodes and be like, oh no, now I got to find clips to things and like promote each episode. And so it's been a chore yesterday, especially because I was trying to get the first couple episodes out. But yeah, I'm home. I'm not in my 9 to 5 anymore. So I am exploring stuff. I also have some life advice, whether you're creative or just in general, and just kind of going through the journey of the last year. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster, but we're working on it.
And Courtney also has a show we've collaborated on called
Beyond the Legends. And so we have 2 full radio drama style episodes, and the reason why I loved having Vinny on is because he does amazing voiceover work, and so he helped me with the script in the last episode for the character, and so that was really cool. It's a very, very experimental podcast. It came from a sound design project in my master's and just kind of took off, and if I wasn't a film person, I'd be an audio person, so that's kind of why I fell in love with it to some degree.
Courtney is a big fan of Foley work, and if you are aware of Foley work, Courtney will explain to you. Courtney?
So Foley is a totally different thing. Like, that's the sound effects, that's the horses stomping like the Monty Python thing and like all that kind of stuff. But my biggest thing, especially growing up, I did music, so getting into that audio space was my first exposure to it. And so when I did the sound design class, I was learning how to do sound effects mix, like with sound effects and music and voice actors and all this stuff. And then I got to really work with like sound engineers who really knew what they were doing too. So I got a lot of like audio learning experience. Plus, when you're editing, like video editing, you have to find a good balance of everything. So what's really cool about it is that also in radio, what I found out was in my radio job, they were like, I asked them, like, isn't it kind of limiting that you guys don't have video? And they're like, no, it's actually freeing because you make people imagine what you want them to imagine. And ever since then, I've been hooked on audio.
Yeah.
So it works out.
Courtney and I both have this passion about how the audio and can tell the story before you see it visually. I mean, I always say that Steven Spielberg is one of my favorite filmmakers because in Jurassic Park, based on the music that's happening, based on the sound effects, you know exactly where you are in the film. And if you haven't seen Jurassic Park, it's been over 20 years.
I was going to say, well,
seriously.
Yeah. It's like at this point you need to see at least the first one.
Yeah. I mean, like, or even Jaws, for instance. I was just watching a documentary on Jaws. The music, you know exactly where the shark is, what's happening, and it kind of builds, and it's the imagination of it all that really gets you. And as you all know, I am gunning for a place in the booth next to Steve Bloom.
Yeah.
With voice work, doing more voiceover challenges and hopefully helping Courtney with the 3rd episode. have been drafting it myself right now. It's called Where Did the Wendigo Go? It's about the Wendigo, which is a Native American spirit skinwalker that actually comes about during the desperation of humankind
Yeah.
when they are forced to be put people on the menu. Long
Yeah.
pig, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, still in the works with Courtney. I'm gonna get that hammered out and everything. Let's see. So today I wanted to bring Courtney back on because we haven't had Courtney on in a while, and
Mhm.
we're going to do a cross episode where we're talking about how when you take your path in life, it takes you in multiple directions.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Courtney,
I would not expect to be where I'm at today if I told my 21-year-old self where I would be.
Courtney, you started off as a painter, right?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a smidgen kid of like everything art, music, that was my thing. So when they were like, "Hey, what do you want to do for college?" I'm like, art and music. What do I do?" So Mason was kind of my place. But I was a painting major for like 4 years. I genuinely was like, and this was during the time where get a piece of paper or something that you like to do. Eventually, you'll get a job in something. But I was doing
Yeah.
like, I have a canvas right now that's 3 foot by 4 foot that I'm working on my mom. So like, this
Damn.
is like a thing. But I've been painting for a long time, like pretty much since I could pick up a brush. And but then there was a shift in the college that we were at where it was like
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with the teachers. Like I only had maybe one teacher I really liked from that department.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting harder to schedule the classes you needed to graduate and stuff. So I
Yes.
had this period, and I think I've told you this story, but I'll readdress it here. But like I had this period where I stopped eating
Yep.
because I was so stressed, and it
Yep.
was 2 weeks of just ugh. So but during that time, my epiphany thing happened, and I will to this day remember this day because I was doing something for I think Pain 3 at the time, and I was listening to a song, and ironically, it's the same band I used for my wedding, but they have a song called Believe, and I've actually seen them in concert for free at Mason. So I got to see like their actual movements on concert. No joke, because I grew up with music videos and Fuse and all this stuff, had frames playing in my head.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh. So I grabbed a pencil, tried to storyboard it. It was going too fast. And then I dropped the pencil. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong major. 4 years later, and I am 22 now. And so it was just one of those moments of like, and I was crying to my mom. I'm like, I need to shift. And
Yes.
so I found Art Institute at the time. It's not there anymore. But I had a small enough community that when I was recovering from anorexia and trying to
Yeah.
get my artwork back and talking to people, and they're like, "You realize what you know how to do is not normal, right?" And I'm like, "No." So it was cool. It was a good transition. But like that was 4 years of college, like trying to figure out what worked. And I've always wanted to do the digital art stuff, but I just never expected to be in film. And I also didn't know it was a job. Like I did editing as a home movie DVD thing, like as a kid, where it's like, oh, went to snowboarding, we're gonna put it on iDVD and like do little clips and stuff, and that was my thing. Like I loved it. It was fun.
For
So
reference, kids, this was when the infancy of
yeah,
YouTube first began. We didn't realize what it was because college is
yeah.
when it first popped up. That was
That was
shock value.
2008-ish, maybe to
Yeah.
2010 at the latest. Because 2010, I
No.
know it was gaining traction because we started seeing like Lindsey Sterling and
Yes.
Tyler Ward and like all these big musician guys who got really big.
Hmm. Rocket Jump Productions got
Yeah,
big.
Rocket Jump was
Corridor
big.
Digital. These guys are the pinnacle of cinematography from the YouTube world. I mean, they
Yeah.
had such amazing content. They were ahead of themselves.
Oh yeah,
And
by
they
far.
they far and because like the Hollywood wasn't hiring them, so YouTube was their place to play and create. And now these guys are insane. Well,
Yeah.
careers can be made or can be truly made
Hmm.
on YouTube now, and then TikTok, and
Oh, TikTok's insane too now.
yeah, and that's a whole different can of worms that I can't even
Hmm.
begin to fathom. There was a series called Vine where you had seven
Oh
seconds
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah. I
create
remember Vine.
content, which was insane, but you were forced to cram so much information in such a short amount of time to get people's attention. I mean,
Oh, you know
now
what's funny? The
what's
Vine
up?
thing, you reminded me of the guy who did story time and then just like followed people
Yes,
around.
yes, and he would
He
make
came back
wonderful
up on my
stories.
Instagram recently and I'm
Mhm.
like, wait, that's where that kid is.
Yeah, and he's still creating. That's the best
Yeah,
part.
that's insane to me.
I mean,
That's
like,
years.
it is. It is. What astounds me is these people are still relevant in their own ways. I mean, the
Hmm.
nostalgia critic. Doug Walker is still one of my favorites. He'll watch an old movie that we grew up with,
Mhm.
for instance, Batman, and he would break it down of the production of what's happening in the story, and he would add so much gravitas and value to a film that I adore. Batman's one of my favorite movies with Tim Burton
Yeah,
of all
Tim Burton's
times.
fantastic.
He never read the comics. He did it his own way. And you get a lot of information with it. And of course, Doug Walker's signature rants about every little thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, I digress. This is
No, no,
about
no. It was reminding me of Every Frame of Painting,
what's
and
that?
that was a really cool. So Every Frame of Painting, there's a really good Jaws. They were talking about the Zolly, which is a
Hmm.
zoom dolly shot, which is like you
Yes.
zoom in on the person, but the background gets kind of warped. But
Yes.
like the guy was recommended actually in film school. They're like, if you want to learn about like film techniques and very
Hmm.
specific directors and whatever, or
Yes.
storytelling, like every frame of painting or every frames of painting is there. I don't know if he's still doing new content, but his channel was so iconic for the film community for
Yeah.
like a long time that like even years later, like he still has so many people that are watching it. So it's cool. Like, but it's crazy. Like you think about, I remember sitting in sub one at
Hmm.
Mason with our, nerdy friends and like
Yeah.
watching music videos and watching
Hmm.
these little bits of things and realizing like how big of a thing it was for the time.
Yeah.
And then seeing them now, like Lindsay Sterling, like the violinist on YouTube. Like I remember watching her first stuff with, I think it's Crystallize was one of her first songs,
Hmm.
like where she filmed in a ice cave, and like that was so iconic at the time. And
Yes.
then to see her now where she's touring and still doing her thing, it's like, dude, it's been 15 years.
That
It's
that's what I love.
nuts.
That's what I love about like our current societies,
Yeah.
like, being able to really put out your art in a way that people can see it vastly and you can get immediate feedback. I mean, when you're working in a theater, you're performing the scenes and you get constructive criticism to kind of mold and shape yourself.
Yeah.
And with YouTube and in TikTok and Instagram and everything, you get immediate feedback so you can grow and develop your whatever it is you're doing. And I think that it's become invaluable. My
Oh,
buddy
yeah.
Chaz, who loaned us this lovely equipment, we are still having some technical issues with the Blue Yeti.
Which we could have a whole conversation about the first 15 minutes of how we got set up for even this. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was back and forth, but that's the joys of the underground independent route. You have to
Oh, yeah.
find your way. And like as me and Courtney both know, a failure is just a lesson in disguise.
Oh, yeah.
You
By
stack up
far.
enough failures, you're bound to win. You're bound to get a win. So in theater, you do the scene and you perform it, and then your peers will give you feedback on it, and then you go back and you do it again, go back and do it again. The beauty about the YouTube and the internet is you have a chance to share your art with people that are either artists and also especially the audience, your potential audience. Friend Joe of the show. I don't know your
Yeah.
last name, Joe. I'm sorry. You always shout me out and remind me to keep going and your
Which is really
support.
cool. Thank you, Joe. I
Yes.
have to keep encouraging him to keep going a
Yes.
lot of the time. So the fact that you exist for him is a freaking amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very grateful to you, Guy. I was working well, at a company, multi-billion dollar company. If you know me, you know what it was. And I met Joe, and he was very cordial, very polite, and I treated him kindly because, well, that's what you do. And he
Yeah.
he needed a pick me up one day, and he said to me that you being kind to me that one day really made a difference, and I want you to
Oh,
succeed.
that's the reason for living, dude. Like,
Yeah.
especially in our field, like, I will never sit there as a person and
Hmm.
act like you were like I'm better than you or you're better than me. I'm just like, hey, you
Oh my
want
God.
to hang out?
Back
Cool,
and forth,
great.
me and
Let's.
Courtney have this like thing where I'm just like, I can't, like, because like I always hype her up and she hypes me up. I'm like,
You were
shut
doing
up,
that to
I'm
me
fine.
yesterday because yesterday
I,
was a horrendous day.
that's the thing. When you're in the art world, you're constantly around peers and you're also around family. Family always says, oh, you're fine, you're doing great. But like, are
Or
you
not.
really? Or, I mean,
or,
like,
or they just don't know, and that's a thing
yes.
too, which that's why I created the podcast too,
Hmm.
because the biggest thing of the We Got Lucky is not just a it is as the first episode I was re-listening to it, I'm like, yeah, it is kind of a play on like we got lucky as an insult but also we got lucky as a blessing.
Yes.
And so with this field, like it is risky, like nobody
Oh,
really
yeah.
understands it unless you're in the field, and that's why like Vinny and I both have
Mm.
these collaboration moments of media because we want you guys to understand, like, this is not just we set up a camera and we record and that's it. We had tech fail for 20 minutes.
We did today, like, I went through everything. I have two cameras. I have the one on my laptop and I have one that I stare at right now, which I don't always look at because I can't see the screen.
Looks great, but
It
it looks
does.
fantastic.
Friend Chaz Myers, thank you again, buddy, or Charlie, as you like to go bad. Charlie always says to me, look, here's the thing about me. If you introduce yourself to me as X, I'm going to call you that. But if you start saying you are Y, like, Courtney, I love you to death. But I swear to God, if you start saying that your name is Marie, I'm never going to talk to you as Marie.
Just give me my middle name and be like, yeah, that's my name now. No. That would drive me crazy too.
I mean, it's just one of those things. And I can't even use my middle name because no one can pronounce it right. I didn't ask for it. I was just given to it.
Yeah.
All right, folks, fine. My full name. Hopefully none of you
the reveal.
Hopefully none of you are Fae users because, as in all Fae culture, the more you know someone's name, the more control you have over them.
Dresden Files lore.
Fact. Me and her are huge Dresden File fans.
Yeah.
So, Jim Butcher, if you're out there, we love you guys. Please
dude. You've been the inspiration for my latest book that I'm writing. So
wait. You have a book you're writing right now?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So, Vinny knows about this, and I think I might have talked about this at one point, but I had a feature script that Vinny also read years ago. And it's been on the shelf forever. It is very much an homage to like supernatural, weird New Jersey lore, but then having a twist of like murder mystery, Agatha Christie kind of vibe to it. But I'm like, you know what? My husband and we self-published his book, which
you self-published a book too? Yeah. What's going on, Courtney?
So
are you
Vinny
trying
had it
to
on
tell
one of
us
his
no?
episodes. No. Vinny had it on one of his episodes. He did a shout out, but the Alcie's Gift by Christopher Shirk, and we'll make sure that we have descriptions and stuff. That is officially all editions outside of an audiobook, which you're trying to figure that out. Is out. Yes. So it is all self-published. There's no agent. There's no marketing team. It is all just me and him. It is a husband-wife team effort. And
what about the cover? You have an interesting story about the cover.
So the cover. So we did Okay, let's be very real here. AI generation is a little bit of a in-between thing right now when it comes to art world. Yes. We did a whole contest through a company that was like, recommended to us, and realized that the artwork was done through AI at the time. At the time, it was just starting out. It was mid-journey. It was whatever. However, legally, because it the way it works, we could not trust it to not be part of a third-party artist, which me being an art major and Chris also, he's an engineer, but he loves to draw and stuff. We would rather pay an artist straight up for their original work and just give them the credit.
Yes.
But we didn't have the option that time. So my husband and I both created the title for the book. So he created the characters and I did the background. We all did it digitally. We're both kind of figuring out the digital aspect of things. So it was a big learning experience. But for 3 months after that the draft was finally completed.
Yeah.
It took us to do that. And everything in the book, so the maps, the crests on the chapters, everything is all hand drawn by my husband. So,
and what's really cool is my cousin Mitch Souliard, love you cousin.
Yeah,
is such a nerd when it comes to this. He's like, well, what's the atmosphere like? What's this like? And he actually looked up the book on Books A Million.
Oh, that's so cool.
And was looking at the maps like this. I'm vibing with this because there's all this description that makes sense to me. Like, that's the beauty of my family. I come from a family of nerds on both sides, thankfully. And a lot of them have certain tastes they look for when it comes to their books and to their lore and everything. He was just took a glance at it and he was like, wow, like this guy really took his time. I'm like, well, he worked on it for 10 years.
For him, it's been since high school. They used to be like NPCs at a D&D tabletop game that he just kind of created. But no, we got huge compliments from his maps too, because I actually know a guy who works on maps and he's like, I work on maps as a living and this looks great. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like I remember seeing him sit down on his tablet. Like I have pictures of him doing the chainmail armor on that character. Every chainmail link, guys.
Yes.
That's all hand drawn. It's insane watching this man work. But no, we published it because we did submit it to a publisher, waited a year for them to say, oh yeah, we only accept 4% of our submissions. I'm
Yeah.
like, we are not waiting a whole nother year for a no. Like we are doing this. So we did the basically did our own research. But because of that, going back to the former thing,
Yeah.
I had a feature script I really loved. I also have another one that I might kind of have within the same universe of a thing because it's supposed to be like realistic, supernatural, like folklore is a real thing. And
Yes.
because,
Yes.
that is the vibe of a lot of weird New Jersey stories.
Hmm.
But I read White Knight by Jim Butcher and then
Yes.
realized, oh no, that has to be Connor. And I was like,
Mm.
oh crap, this is going to shift everything.
Yes.
So I finished the first draft of the book of the original. It's called Somerset in the script,
Hmm. Hmm.
and made a fictionalized town and all this stuff, which was inspired by a weird New Jersey like actual cold case, but then realized like it's not the same story anymore. So I made it fictionalized. It's really crazy how much different it was, but I'm telling you, dude, like a couple
Hmm.
weeks ago, I finished it at 2:30 in the morning because I had just such a couple weeks of like I'm on the finale chapters. What am I doing?
Yes.
2:30 in the morning, I was crying after I like literally wrote the last sentence of what Connor says in the end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, this is ending. Oh no, crap. So now I'm in the revision stage of like all the plots there, but I'm adding more little personal scenes, trying to get to know characters because all the characters in the story, I am genuinely trying to make you feel something for them. So when something
Yes.
happens to them, all hell breaking loose.
Well, yeah. I mean, the characters are people at the end of the
Yeah.
day. They are people that live in your mind, but are
Which they
real.
weren't in the script. Like you have so
Hmm.
like that's what's so limiting about script writing is that you are fully visual and audio only.
Yes.
You the only way you can detect a character is based on what they wear, maybe how they
Hmm.
speak to somebody, how they present themselves, and that's it.
Yes.
Books, you have the freedom to like get in their head, figure out what their background is, all this stuff. So that was what was freeing about going backwards
Yes.
to book versus the film stuff that I learned in the last 15 years.
But what's funny is every time like we talk about writing, because
Yeah.
that's also one of your pillars of
Hmm.
creativity, you always tell me that write it as a book first because
Intellectual property. So
yes.
I've been giving the advice a lot where it's like if you have the intellectual property, it is
Hmm.
easier to go from book to script because at that point you already have the front and back
Yes.
and you have the entire back knowledge of the world that it's easier for you to convert to script writing. Script writing is very much about subtext. It's very much
Yes.
about how the person presents themselves. It's what you see and hear only. So if you have something in the book, it's very easy. Like I did a book adaptation project like a couple of years ago on a book that was first person. It was very easy for me to do it in the sense of okay, well she's walking into the house and knocking on the door. Okay, they have this conversation. What works, what doesn't? What needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done? Because you expect if the person has read the book as well as the script that they'll kind of get a gist of the vibe anyway.
Yes.
You're just trying to move the story forward when it's in script form. But at
Yeah.
least you have the dialogue there and everything that's important that's there. So that's kind of
And
how I go with it. And plus,
yeah.
you get to do what you want to do with it once it's yours. That's the greatest thing about it.
Hmm. I think that makes the most sense. I mean, as the audience knows, I would hope you would know, I am writing my first book this year because of that one. It's all her fault. I mean, we have this
both of
as
our, both me and my husband's fault.
yeah, because like she and I have this like creative, competitive, not really collaborative. It's like creative,
Not
collaborative,
competitive, but it's kind of like,
aggressive,
here, I did a thing. Come see it.
aggressive,
I call it the gold
collaborative.
star mentality because it really kind of is.
Yeah, really. It's nuts. Like me and her, and now Chris, her husband,
Yeah.
Christopher Shirk, her husband, have this aggressively supportive, collaborative spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Not really a competition. It's more like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to do my podcast, as she's been pointing out for me forever and a day, you got to do your podcast. And that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
then they put out Chris's book, and she's like, hey, guess what? We just printed out Chris's book. You know what that means? I get a copy of his book.
Yeah. Get signed hard copy.
And yeah, I definitely want that.
And
But
the
him and,
bookmarks.
and the
And the
bookmarks.
merch.
Yeah. So like every
So
chapter,
that was the other thing we were doing this week was we were
yes.
doing tech stuff so he could my husband's being an engineer, so he knows how to connect things to things, including PCs and things.
That's his
He
world.
is doing crazy tech stuff to make sure like he can draw on his laptop while looking on his monitor. And so that's been his new thing. So he could do merch. And I told him, you could do bookmarks, you could do
Yep.
anything with those crests that you have. It's all copywritten, like it's great.
I want a collection of crests either
Yeah.
in trading card format or bookmark format
Yeah,
because I
I
need a
told him
bookmark
that.
for
So
that. And I know
I
you
would
did.
love for him to get a companion book too, since it's a series. I would love for him to have because he has a glossary at the end of his book, so it's
Yes,
like you
yes.
can't pronounce things, or if it's a lore thing, like it's on the
Yeah,
back. He is working on book two though, so that's been
that's very exciting.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll deal with it either this year or next year. But everything's about why would you wait? Like I literally just saw a post
Yes.
recently saying like why would you wait? Like you only have one life, do it
Hmm.
tomorrow. Because the more you wait for the perfect time, that's never going to show up. Then you're going to regret
No.
even not doing it to begin with.
I mean, like why put off tomorrow? We can put it on today. Why put
Mm-hmm.
off tomorrow? We can do today. Ben Franklin,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, once that book was finally done, she's like, now you can write your book. And I was like,
Well,
okay,
you've been brainstorming it for a minute, and I'm like, you
yeah,
should technically. And I told we were talking about differences between like memoir versus like fictionalized, and I'm like, well,
yes,
just you're allowed to use your stories, just write it
yes,
down.
yeah.
So,
I mean, like my book is semi-autobiographical because there's a
mm,
lot of things that happen in the story
mm.
that I put in there. And a situation happened where my mom was like, you need to focus on your career. And I said, yes, ma'am. And a friend of mine from Christie decided that Hinkson, I believe that's how I pronounce her last name, was like, I'm going to do my CDL. You should come hang out at the hotel so you can get your mind off the family
Yeah.
situation. And I was like, okay. And I took the opportunity. I wrote down every single chapter I wanted to write about, title, description, and I banged out the rough draft.
Which is insane. With I remember him calling me saying, "Guess what I did?" I'm like, "What'd you do?"
Yeah,
He's like, "I wrote the book," and I'm like,
that's what
what?
we
And you're
do.
like, I did it in 3 days. I'm like,
Three and a half
cool, like
days. Three
great,
and a half
like that's
days.
awesome. He's like, I feel so bad. I'm like, no, you're fine. Like that's
I
it's
did. I did feel bad because Chris goddamn did the thing in like took him 10 years. But then Courtney
technically
being
it took him that
the
long, but
uh,
dedicated
yeah.
year. Like the
Yeah.
technically for us to do it ourselves and for him
Hmm.
to get a writer's perspective on his
Yes.
own book on a universe that I was not familiar with.
Yeah.
It took us from January to June. So
Yes.
what is that, 6 months to
Yeah, give or
just do
take.
that.
Yeah.
But the
But
thing is, like, that's just different. Like, it's a different
yes.
genre.
Absolutely. You're creating something out of complete nothingness. And my thing is I more collect all the crazy stories I've been on because Courtney has always
Yeah,
told me I need to put my crazy stories to this or to book. And
or
so we're
both.
doing or both. That's what we're doing. She's like, just tell some crazy audition stories you have. And I'm like, I
I
don't
mean,
know if people will listen
you
to
could
it.
talk about on-set stories that we've been doing together, like because we
Oh
did a couple
yeah.
of them
We did
to
two
whatever.
so
Like, you've had
far.
so much going on.
Yeah, and like the thing is like what I enjoy most about Courtney is she is an advocate. So like you say, like Courtney, this crazy thing happened. I was working at the job and this rapper asked me to come through and listen to some music. And now I'm officially on a song. And she's
Which
like,
is insane.
yeah, for those
Insane
who
the amount of luck that you get sometimes.
I have, but here's the thing. My luck is very, very flip-floppy. Okay.
Yeah.
So we did the song. All is good. We're about to release it. We're doing all this paperwork. It gets flagged for copyright. So we
Oh,
can't release it because the engineer used a beat pack or something. So,
oh no.
but the cap, yes. So it's very frustrating. And, but sorry, a little technical difficulty. So it's very frustrating. And I'm just like, what am I gonna do? And what's wild is the cool guy in the room, E Supreme,
Mm,
one of the rappers I collaborated with was like, "Hey man, I really like what you're doing. I want to
mm,
collaborate with you." I'm like, "Okay, cool," because that's my luck. It's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this cool thing," and then nothing really happens. And
yeah.
then he explains, "I'm making this project, but I want to make it like my purple tape." In the Wu-Tang Clan, I don't remember all the rappers' names because I'm really bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, hip hop world. Essentially, a guy made a purple tape, made a tape, cassette tape that was color purple,
Cool.
and he promoted this new up and coming rapper on it. So what E wants to do, he wants to promote my skills as a voice actor so that the world can hear what I do.
Which is insane when it comes
Mhm.
to that, because you don't usually think about that. But that's a cool method of like
Yeah.
that genre of music is to have voiceover actors and all that stuff. But I mean, that's becoming really popular
Oh,
when it comes
absolutely.
because it's something you could put on the internet and people can imitate it, and that's what's
Oh,
really cool about it.
the TikTok world is insane. People
It
are just
is.
like taking copyright information and putting it out there, not really as
Mm-hmm.
their own, but like kind of it's like when the young kid like impersonates the guy. So
Oh
anyway,
yeah,
that project got shelved, but E Supreme recently reached out to me like, hey, in 2 or 3 weeks from now, I got a couple projects in mind. Let's collaborate together. And I was like, you know what? Why not? I am
yeah,
open. And what's great about him is he's like, at the end of the night, when we're done recording, you'll get a rough cut. I'll get a rough cut. We can figure out what to do from there. But anyway, I digress. Courtney and I have this thing like, hey, I did this thing. Does this make sense? Or holy crap, I just got a shout out from an independent writer that I've been following. I
yeah.
met this person on Discord. That's more her. She's like pounding the pavement, talking to the people, getting to know people that way.
Yeah, I'm Instagram. I don't have TikTok yet. I'm trying to figure out if I really, really need it. But otherwise, like Instagram, I've been connecting with like just about anybody. It could be an indie
Yes.
author to
Hmm.
like cosplaying people to
Yeah.
whatever, and people who are just passionate about the same level. Like I just talked to somebody from out of the country who, is really cool. And I just promoted my husband's book and said, yeah, we
Yeah.
did a thing. And they're like, oh my God, that's sick. Like you just, this whole life experience,
Yes.
it doesn't matter if you're in our field or otherwise. You just have to be okay with being yourself in front of other people and just
Yes.
having what's the term called when you're trying to do like how's the weather kind of conversations, but like that it is kind of
Small
like a,
talk.
yeah, small talk. So doing like small talk but then having the comfortability to like really open up about your experience and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm
What's hard for me is like me and my sister are very similar, and like we do not like small talk. We like
Oh
to
no, I hate
actually.
it. That's
It's
why like
so
how I'm
ugh.
talking to you is how I
Yes.
talk to everybody. That's
Exactly.
why
You
I'm very
go
much
right
in the,
in.
yeah, because but the thing is like I learned that from a friend of mine who's like a really big deal where he's
Hmm.
at, and he had the mentality of like what you see is what you get.
Yes.
I wish I did that at 20.
Yeah.
But I noticed that as I was at SCAD and I was talking to younger kids who were getting into the master's degree, like they were just getting out of bachelor's. I'm 27, 28 at the time. They're like 22, coming
Babies.
right out of bachelor's. And it's like I realized that when I talked to them about my experience, like, holy crap, you worked for this thing? Holy crap. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so your value of what you've done in your life really is the eyes of the beholder
Yes.
versus how people see you on the outside. So I'm very diverse on what I like. I am very
Hmm.
diverse on, like, I was just talking to a guy and I'm like, I'm sure I probably don't look like a person who listens to heavy metal
Hmm.
or rock or alternative or something because like this is me. I also wear glasses. I'm not wearing them now for reflection purposes. But
Understood.
like in passing, you
Hmm.
probably don't realize like I love motorcycles, I love
Yes.
rock music, love metal from South
Yes.
Jersey, like
Yes.
whatever. But that is what whatever you hear from me is me. Like
What
I
you see
don't
is
try
what you
to
get.
meld.
No,
I'm just a very complex person.
yeah, but like the beauty about having all these different diverse ta creative outlets that you have with
Mm.
painting and writing and filmmaking, editing, it all comes together to
Oh
formulate
yeah.
you as a creative person. I mean, folks of the show know that I started on the stage, then I got into film, then I got into stand-up, then I got into voiceover work, and then hip-hop game, and then dinner theater, cheesy, realistic, back and forth. I do all these different types of storytelling to help create this force of nature I've been described as whenever I come on set. And
Well, the
it's
other thing is too, people have this bad tendency to
mm,
box themselves.
immensely,
And
yes.
it's not like Vinny's like, well, I don't know how to write. I'm like, it doesn't
I
matter,
have
just
no
go
idea.
write. Like nobody needs to have that validity
Yeah.
of doing something. Like the fact that you're doing something and learning from it. Like I was trying to learn cello a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Never touched one in my life. I've done piano and singing my entire life.
Yes.
But like I'm not going to stop myself from learning something because I'm genuinely interested. Like you should keep learning in your life regardless of what it is, because that's going to
Yeah.
make you know, and it's okay if you don't like it. Like that's the thing too. Like you could say, "You know
Hmm.
what? Not for me. I tried it. Cool." Like it's like we make failure and not liking something such a horrible defect of ourselves, for lack of a better term.
Yes, yes. And it's you know, it's part of growing and developing, you know, like I'm not saying, you know, go do cocaine, see if you like
Oh God,
cocaine.
no, 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 no,
But
no!
when it
Don't
comes
do
to
drugs, kids,
creativity,
please, for the love of God.
say no to drugs. Hugs, not drugs. What I'm saying is creatively, you have to experience different things. It'll open you up to new possibilities. You can pull things like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah,
Aang took elements of bending to like from
literally everywhere.
everywhere, and it helped him in his fights with, you know, if you watch the show. Anyway, long story short, as when you are a creative and you have different outlets you get into, you get different thoughts and thinking processes that will help you become a more creative person. It's important. I mean, I pull elements from singing,
Yeah,
rhyme, and because I've been writing more, I've been making me more creative when I'm going into the booth. And
yeah,
what's nuts about like the whole TikTok thing is that they have voiceover challenges. So if you wanted
yeah.
to
I've
be a
seen that.
voice
Those
actor,
have been so
yes.
cool.
If you want to get into voice work and you want to get feedback to see if this is worthwhile, if you want to do it, do the challenges. I'm not saying you're going to get TikTok famous real quick, but you will be stretching and growing the putty that is the creativity in your mind.
And
And I
it's
think
practice.
that's exactly what it is.
It's practice and
It's
exposure, and just,
practice.
and that's the big thing. So I think I told you this.
Yes.
For my podcast, I have been itching since I started talking to some of these guys on Instagram who do like the full cosplay stuff.
Yes.
I'm like, I was talking to one of them and he's like, oh, it's not like as impressive. And I'm like, you're still filming. Like,
You
that's a
are.
massive thing, right? So it got me the idea of like filming and editing tips for content creators. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to be on camera. And so tomorrow, like ideally tomorrow on
Yes.
Wednesday, I will film. And then I have a really nice blue wall. And then I
Yes.
realized, oh, there's like some tips about green screen that you just need like a solid color.
Yes.
So I'm not gonna lie, Monday I had such a hard time sleeping because
Mm.
I was like, I was thinking of every possible angle of filming, and I have not
Yes.
had that in a long time. And I'm like, oh no, that's when you know you need to do it.
Yeah.
Your gut will tell you when you need to do things. So if you have like that urge with the voiceover TikTok stuff, like,
Yes.
and you're
Yes.
terrified, like there's probably a reason why you're terrified, and it's not because you're afraid, it's because it'll actually do something for you. Trust
Exactly.
me.
When we were most afraid is when we should do things. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very, very much.
Neil Gaiman says when you're angry, create art. When you're sad, create art. When you're angry, because that's when you're gonna break through. And
Mm.
you know, I've always been told you got to keep breaking through because it'll take you to the other side. Okay, kids. So we're gonna split up this podcast because of the recording setup. We can only get a certain amount of times. So we'll end it like we always do. That does not serve you, does not deserve you. Be your own best friend. And as always, you can always be greater than you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Courtney, we're going to come back after a short break, and thank you
Sounds
guys for coming
good.
along. What's it called? We'll see you guys next time.